we're going to talk about these really total garbage CPI, Consumer Price Index numbers. Don't let your eyes glaze over with these numbers. These came out today from, we got these from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We knew they were coming. The White House was girding its loins for them. They are awful, but it's actually worse than what they're telling us, and they're lying to our face about what these numbers actually mean.
Okay, but the actual numbers that governments are agreeing upon is 8.5%. So last month, we freaked out because the number was 7.7%. That means that in March, you paid 7.7% more for your groceries and your living expenses than you did March of 2021. Well, now, this April, you are paying 8.5% more for your groceries than you did last April 2021. Now, last week, I did feel like the White House was taking a big victory lap over employment numbers and saying, great, this is historic. It's the biggest comeback ever. More people are back to work. Fewer people are out of work. But whoever is working is actually making less money, right? So I do feel like the White House was preparing us because we knew, and actually they've been saying this for a long time, numbers are going to be bad, and they are.
Yeah, so inflation accelerated 8.5% is the number you're seeing on your screen. This is what the Wall Street Journal and all major media outlets reported immediately once we got these numbers, 8.5% as oil prices soar. And then this was the tweets here, heard around the world. March inflation 8.5% from a year ago, highest in 41 years, month over month, up 1.2%, highest since 2005. But wait a second. Wait one hot minute. This number is wildly off and totally inaccurate, and it's way worse. So I'm going to go through this a little bit here and kind of rain on your parade. The Kanza, I like this tweet. It says CPI equals bullshit metric massaged to minimize the reality. Your savings and purchasing power have been getting ravaged. Yet even on their own terms, look back at CPI in the 1990s and 1980s, equivalent of 13% and 17% respectively, not 7.9% or even 8.5%. As usual, you are being lied to. And what exactly is he talking about here? So if you pull up the data on consumer inflation as it compares over the years, like year-to-year change through February of 2022, based on 1980s, if you look at the version like versus the 1980s based version of how CPI was measured back then. Okay, so the way that CPI was measured is in blue. So it's much more accurate to look at the blue line, but the red line is now what we're being spoon fed. Okay. So now if you look at where we are right now in 2022, again, the way that if we change these data points and weighted totally differently, again, it's way higher than what the White House is telling us. And just look at the overall data here for the annual monthly supply growth of amount of money in circulation. Look at this. This is the United States money that's been produced and printed over the past few years. Look at that gray line there.
Well, that absolutely is something that contributes to inflation. I want to clarify something that the chat room is getting a little offended about. When I talked about doomsday prepping, I was talking about the stereotype used to be that the type of people that doomsday prepped were white, Christian, conservative voters, right? I am not saying all white men are Christian. I am not saying all conservative voters are preppers. I am not saying anything of the sort. I am saying that the stereotypical doomsday prepper is no longer that subset.
Yeah, you could see it in television and media, and Western media would show it on TV all the time.
And I think it's so funny, though, that the media portrays people who try to learn to live self-sustaining as paranoid, right? And the rest of us that live off of this like grocery economy, which is political, we can see this now because of inflationary numbers.
And even in police handbooks say if people are preppers, they have third-party candidate bumper stickers, they have the Constitution. Those are things for them to watch out for.
I mean,
those are warning signs.
So I think what Natalie's saying is that whole stereotype is condescending. I think maybe it came out wrong. Way to piss people off right at the top of the show.
Okay, sorry.
I'll just add they forgot the Pacific Northwest liberal hippies that are also doomsday preppers.
Well, I think, but isn't it funny though? And just follow the money, you guys. Follow the money. Why would they criticize people like that? Why would they criticize people who like grow their own food, have their own chickens? live off of the land,
Right.
because they're not on Mother USA's teat.
Exactly, right. So because you're not participating in the GDP, you're actually planning to not live in a geopolitical way that's based on like the trucking of everything you need to live.
Right.
It's crazy to me. But getting back to the inflationary numbers, right? Because those of us who don't know how to live off the land yet, we are then going to be subject to these inflationary pressures. And a Moody's economist, Mark Zandi, said that this is a perfect storm of several things. One, the Russian invasion, which like it's really hard to quantify how that's hurting our economy at this point, but let's give it at least, let's put it in the algorithm. Okay. Surging oil prices, duh. China locking down, yes, since we depend so much on Chinese exports. Further disruption to supply chains, wage growth accelerating, unfilled positions. He says this is just kind of a scrambled mess leading to painfully high inflation. We'll call this the Denver omelet of inflation. I hope no one from Denver decides now to get upset about what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, have either of you read Daniel Quinn, like Ishmael, My Ishmael?
No, I haven't. Have you?
No, I don't even know what it is.
Oh my gosh! So it was like one of the first like just really eye-opening books I ever read, like truly eye-opening. But one of the things he points out in it was how we take as a society, we take things like food, which can grow freely in the ground, then we lock it up, and then we have to work our asses off to get some of it back.
So crazy. Wait, okay, so I'm putting this in my
so it's Ishmael, and then My Ishmael, which, as an aside, like Ishmael was a little bit harder to read because the main character is just so dense sometimes that you're like, come on, man.
Series.
Yeah,
Daniel Quinn.
he's a fantastic writer, but they're both really good reads, and they're pretty quick reads.
I love what about says in our chat. Every time you prepare for a storm, you're prepping.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it is true. It's like it becomes so condescending to hear like how people talk down. I mean,
these are not my stereotypes that I'm talking about that are this, like this is literally was the crux of this NPR story that prepping goes mainstream because we no longer think of it as just this paranoid subset of people any longer. In fact, people who prep, which good point is anyone who even has an earthquake kit, right?
Right.
Tend to be now younger, skew female, and there is no political affiliation. So
Dan Scott says, I don't think it's paranoid. I'm sad though that we have to consider owning chickens because eggs are so expensive.
Right.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
You can get a chicken. Like we're in Europe, we can get a chicken for €2. But I know even in the United States, getting a chick is like $3. It's relatively inexpensive. So think about that $3 chicken producing, an unlimited source of eggs, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but thanks to
that's a performing asset, right?
And I know a lot of people.
One of those neighborhood rules, the neighborhood associations, most of them don't allow you to have chickens or anything like that.
Oh, we know this story.
We know this story all
my
too well.
My sister-in-law moved house because of this to own her own chickens.
She had chickens. She was living off the land with these chickens, and a neighbor complained about them, and they weren't making any noise. There was no rooster involved. There was no rooster waking people up at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
They didn't make any noise. They had a chicken coop, and they got complaint. And she said, "Fine, I'm not selling my chickens. I'm moving instead."
I feel kind of like we're going to a crazy place because we're talking about self-sustaining living in conjunction with the consumer price index. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a stretch, but is it, right? And so then I think to myself, why doesn't the news do this? Why doesn't the news say, everything's so expensive to live your life the way we currently do? What can you do? So I'm struggling with myself because to me it makes perfect sense.
But I think the problem is because from the Wall Street perspective, the way out of it is for us to buy our way out of it. We just need to consume more. It's it's like the classic GDP, how they use the GDP to look at like our gross domestic product. It doesn't have any negatives in it. So if you take a forest, which has value of its own, you cut it down, it doesn't have value until it's turned into lumber. You don't actually factor in the loss of forest. It's just now we've made more lumber. It's like everything is designed just to consume. We don't we don't look at it the other way.
Right.
Great point. And again, this is why Wall Street loves inflation, right? Because these, their price, they get to squeeze more Doritos or take fewer Doritos and put them in a bag and charge you more for that bag of Doritos. We've seen this time and time again. And over the past few months, we featured stories here on the show about the size of the things that you buy are now in the grippable container. Like, this is the biggest bullshit story. I love this. You know, when you get the water bottle,
yeah,
that now has like it says now in a grippable container, and it's shaped like an hourglass. They literally just shaved liquid out of it to make it grippable. No, all they did was just take liquid out of it, and now they're charging you the same amount for it.
Yes.
It's total horseshit. But I want to go back to this CPI number, because the reason they're lying about it, and the reason we know they're lying about it, is because the Bureau of Labor Statistics said they're lying about it, and they don't plan to do anything about it. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics had a meeting in January to fix this whole thing. Now, the problem is the way basically that the CPI is weighted. And what it does is it weights the wrong things, bottom line. And they knew they could fix this. So when you look at the data, the things that are being measured where consumers are spending more money, or things of the costs are going up, is being weighted differently than it was in the 1980s and the 1990s. Therefore, it's showing inflation as less oppressive, I guess you could say, now. And the actual numbers are much higher. But here, you can go to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics website. I'll link it up here on your screen. And here was their January 2022 meeting, where it says weights for the Consumer Price Index are calculated based on consumer expenditure data from 2019 to 2020. The BLS consider interventions, but decided to maintain the normal procedures. So it's right in their meeting that they literally had a meeting about this to fix it, and they didn't.
Well, yes, but economists have been arguing about this for now, I would say 15 years, right? And since Ben Bernanke sort of decided to capitulate about market perversion. He really didn't want to do it. He was very anti it. He knew this would happen. This was like 2011, right? When he finally did this under pressure from Obama. This is what we get, you guys. And I want to remind you this idea of what an economist I learned about on the Wealthability podcast, Tom Wheelwright's podcast, called the Amazon, Walmart, China, the WAC problem, Walmart, Amazon, China. I said that backwards, right? Is that depending on cheaply made products shipped to you quickly from these three sources has made us think that the economy is okay because we are able to flood ourselves with cheaply made goods. But this has been a long time coming.